each year, our Rotary District Governor, 6250, visits our club, along with 59 other clubs in our district. So Bill has a lot of visits to make, and he's getting them all in. Today, we welcome Bill, our current district governor. Bill has been a member of the La Crosse Downtown Rotary Club for 26 years. He has served as his club president and has served as the district in a number of ways. He was the chair of the Public Relations Committee under 3 district governors, co-chaired the Visioning Committee for several years, helped do club strategic planning. He is also on the planning committee for 6 district conferences and emceed the Tri-Con in Appleton one year, and chaired 1 district conference. We look forward to your presentation, Bill, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way of saying thanks for speaking to us today. As I welcome Bill to the podium, I remind you that if time permits for questions, I will be out in the audience with a microphone. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And to my fan club in the back, love you, Mary. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. President Jason, past district governors, what a pleasure to be here this afternoon. And I'm going to hold this because I had 28 years of experience using one of these, so I might as well do it like I used to. That was my first career, was in broadcasting. So grateful to be in front of a club with so much horsepower, and especially grateful to President Jason because he stood by with a smile on his face when I recruited his wife to join Rotary, and she joined another club that I recommended in Madison. Great to be here and great to see some old friends. I want to be the first to invite you to the 2019 District Conference. There are save the date cards on your tables. Also on your tables is the pin that represents this year's theme, and there's a whole load of them on the table as you leave. Feel free to pick one up and wear it in good health. I've been starting all of my club visits with a short bit of Rotary 101. After a good deal of thought, I concluded, despite the fact that you are a very knowledgeable Rotary Club, you could probably stand it. Who is this Rotary District Governor guy, and why is he here speaking to us? Well, you pay your dues to your club sends part of your dues to Rotary International. Some of you may have forgotten, but you're not a member of Rotary International. You're a member of this club, and the club is a member of Rotary International because that's what RI is an association of Rotary clubs. There are now more than 35,000 Rotary clubs worldwide, and that number has gone up. And for years, you've heard people talk about, well, a membership is just basically can't seem to get over 1.2 million. And 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking 32 or 33,000 clubs. Now it's 35,000. And indeed, the membership of Rotary worldwide is starting to slowly grow. Not so much in North America, but it's not shrinking as much as it was. The clubs are all organized into districts. There's 530 districts around the world. Our district has 62 clubs. We go from Beloit up around Horicon and over through Marshfield and west to the Mississippi River, Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls, Menominee, and 1 county in Minnesota. And so there's 62 clubs there. All of the districts are organized into zones. We're getting a little deep here, but the reason that's important at all is because Rotary International has 17 members of its board of directors, and there are 34 zones, and so each pair of zones elects a director to the board. Okay, so much for the dry stuff. The important thing that Rotary knows, and you should certainly all know, is that the real work of Rotary gets done right here. You all are where the rubber meets the road. You all are doing the important projects, whether it's as a club, and you have so much horsepower, you don't need a lot of other clubs, but you do cooperate with other clubs, sometimes around the block and sometimes around the world, or some other agency. If you want to get a better understanding sometime of just how many projects get done in the name of Rotary, and there are a bunch, go on the Rotary website If you haven't done it, I would encourage you to open a My Rotary account. If you have a computer, it takes 60 seconds, even if you're not that handy on a computer. And you will be able to find this thing called the Rotary Showcase. What's that? Well, it's a listing of past projects done by Rotary clubs around the world. And it's far from complete. I think my club, for example, in La Crosse, had only posted one thing ever on that list. And about half the clubs in our district have never posted any of their projects on that list. And yet that list represents, of the ones that are listed, 70 million volunteer service hours and $1.2 billion spent in the name of Rotary. That's not exactly chump change, and that's not counting polio. That's over and above. Something to be proud there. Rotary's biggest project, of course, is polio, and that battle is not over yet. Rotary is often asked what comes next after polio, because we've been hearing about we're that close for a number of years now. And the blunt answer, ladies and gentlemen, is there is no next after polio. There is no next. Rotary will not take its eyes off that prize until it is dead, gone, buried in the ground forever and ever. And you all know, when is ever and ever? When do we win that war? Most people think it's 3 years without a new case of polio, right? Not right. It's 3 years without a trace of polio, and that's a big difference. We all are aware of the thousands of volunteers going around the world putting drops on kids' tongues. What we lose sight of too easily is that there are thousands of other volunteers around the world doing way dirtier work. Way dirtier. They're going into sewers and taking samples. They're going out into open fields that people use as sewers and taking samples and sending those samples to the laboratories that our Rotary Polio Plus contributions helped set up over these years to see if there's any polio virus still living in those samples. So when we go 3 years without a trace of polio is when the World Health Organization will say, okay, we're finally done with this battle. Our district is committed to raise $125,000 this year toward Polio Plus. We hope you will help us meet that goal. We met it last year handily, and I'm sure we'll meet it again this year. It's often said we stop the fight, that polio will make a comeback, and anybody knows that's true. And the old phrase is, it's only a plane ride away. That's not true. It's closer than that. Just out of curiosity, anybody, and if there was ever a club in our district, I would expect probably somebody in this room's got to know the answer to this. It's a trivia question. Let's say in the last 15 years, any idea where the closest polio outbreak was to Madison, Wisconsin? Past District Governor Rob nailed it. Central Minnesota. It was an Amish colony in Canada that didn't vaccinate and had a young child with an immune deficient condition that had picked up the virus. They took a bus trip to central Minnesota, and lo and behold, there were 5 cases of polio. And imagine the shock of the doctors in that town. And there was also a Rotary Club in that town. And within 3 days, they called Evanston, and they had $10,000 in their checkbook saying, get those people vaccinated. I'm not an expert in Amish culture. My understanding is they don't refuse to vaccinate. They just typically have a little higher threshold of when is it really, really necessary. And in that case, facing an outbreak of the disease, they vaccinated right away. The value of what we have done as Rotarians in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative is just huge. You all know the numbers. 350,000 cases when we started and all of that. But we should be so proud to be a part of that partnership. And we're recognized worldwide for our leadership, along with World Health and the CDC. The Gates Organization, the Gates Foundation, they recognize us. And that's no small organization. Any other organization that wants to get a match from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has to raise their money and then go to their foundation and say, will you match us? Only one group hasn't had to do that, and that's us. The group that we're a part of got $350 million from the Gates Foundation, and they said, don't worry, we know you're good for it. And we were. They still match us 2 for 1. I know that you're all aware of that. Another 2 years, if you give $1, they give $2. No other organization gets that kind of treatment. You should be proud of that. See, in my opinion, a lot of people know a lot of the good works you do here in Madison and around the district. But when you're talking to them about Rotary and you're describing what your club does, very few of them have a clue how big the engine is under the hood of this thing you call Rotary. They don't have any grasp of how broad Rotary's reach is around the world, how big dreams Rotary can dream, and they should, because they'd be very impressed. We have something in Rotary you may not be familiar with. It's called the Rotary Representative Corps. Ed Fuda, who will be speaking at our district conference next year and is a past general secretary, John Huco took his place. Ed's in retirement, is the dean of the Rotary Representative Corps. What the heck is that? We have permanent representatives as an organization in the United Nations. Now, many of you probably knew that because many of the people who started Rotary a long time ago, or excuse me, who started the United Nations a long time ago, were Rotarians. Okay, the United Nations, the Council of Europe, the World Food Program, the African Union, the World Bank, the Organization of American States, the League of Arab States, the European Union. That's about half the list. We have permanent people on each one of those organizations. How do we get recognized at that kind of level? Simple. Rotary gets things done. You all get things done. We promote world peace. We go into a war zone to send volunteers to vaccinate kids against polio, and they declare a truce when other people haven't been able to get them to stop fighting. Why do they do that? It's because they understand Rotary doesn't pick sides. We don't care what political parties or religions are involved. We want to come in and save kids' lives, give them better living conditions, a better education. These international organizations recognize us because we have something none of them have. None of them. We have boots on the ground in 220 countries every day of the year. Every day. Some of those boots are graduates of our Peace Scholars program, helping slowly to move our planet toward a little better place. So where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty simple. I think it's time each one of us, me included, has a little more Rotary pride. Barry Rassin, this year's Rotary International President, sent us all out in San Diego this year with the mission, go out there and be the inspiration. That's the theme. Well, think about that for a minute. I'm one person, and Rotary is a team sport, and you're all on the team. So I would ask each one of you, who was your inspiration to join Rotary? Somebody was. And many times that somebody wasn't even the person who may have asked you to join the club. Maybe you joined the club because you got asked, and then you got in the club and recognized or met somebody whose dedication and passion just blew you away. So, you know, what I'm getting at here is it's time when you realize all of the, I mean, I just heard that the numbers in your board meeting are absolutely staggering. The amount of money you give away, the projects you're involved with, the reach of this organization, the depth of it in your community, with all the good you do here, with all the good we do around the world. How can you not have Rotary pride? How can you not live Rotary pride? But most importantly, folks, how can you not share Rotary pride? It's a natural human reaction. If you really enjoy something, have fun doing it, and are proud of it, you share it. If that were not true, a lot of grandmas and grandpas wouldn't have much to talk about, would they? So, who will you inspire to join Rotary? Whether you know it or not, you know, the hours that you all spend in service to your club, whether it be publicly or privately, are not invisible. People see you doing that service in one way or another. They hear about it. You're telling, well, I got to go to this meeting, or we're meeting here, there, or our scholarship committee meeting, or we got the ethics symposium coming up this weekend, and I'm helping with that. And they see how enthusiastic you are. They see you're having fun doing it. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them are thinking, yeah, that looks like fun. I could do that. You got to ask them. So I'm asking you to take this year's theme to heart and be somebody's inspiration. Now, inspiring the biggest club in the district and one of the 6 biggest in the world to get more members is great. But I think there's some other areas that you can work in as well. And they're important. And you're already doing some of them, and I applaud you for that. When you think about inspiring others, I'm happy to see your club collaborating with other area clubs on projects. I have no shame in telling you the story about recruiting Jason's wife to be a member of another club in Madison. And you know what? Neither should you. Because not every Rotary Club is a perfect fit for somebody, but most people can fit into some Rotary Club. So when I visited Books for the World this past Friday, I happened to run in, total coincidence, there were United Way volunteers there when there were two people from La Crosse that I had known when they were in La Crosse. Now they're living here. And I said, hey, you ought to join Rotary. One of them's a little younger. I said, yeah, check out that After Hours Club. And she said, yeah, I ought to do that because she's impressed with the Books for the World project. You have so much horsepower in this club. I just hope you continue on the trail and maybe devote just a small extra amount of thought and effort to being the inspiration also in your partnerships with other clubs in the area. Because after all, it's not just about the club, my club or your club. It's about Rotary. And the better Rotary is, the healthier Rotary is, the stronger Rotary is. In Madison, the stronger Rotary is worldwide, the more we all benefit. You have a tremendous resource here, and you ought to be congratulated. Finally, I want to tell you a little bit about my Rotary backstory, if you will. I was a Rotarian before I joined Rotary. Now, how does that work? Well, it's particularly appropriate since we're in the middle of a flood. In fact, the 2-hour journey from La Crosse now takes 3 hours and 15 minutes. I had to go 100 miles east before I could catch I-39 to come down here today. In 1965, the Mississippi River at La Crosse, Wisconsin hit its all-time record 100-year flood record, and it's never been back that high since. And they let the high school kids out of school to help fight the flood, not just in La Crosse. They bused kids from 30 miles away, Sparta, Tomah, Viroqua, into La Crosse to help fight the Mississippi River. And I was just a little high school kid shoveling sand and filling sandbags, but the impact, the import, the stakes were so in-your-face important to even stupid high school kids at that time. And the fact that we were clearly making a difference was so obvious that it really kind of lit a spark. So fast forward 20 years. Oh, and by the way, they won that battle. La Crosse is still there. And there's still a monument in the city park in La Crosse that's dedicated to the young people of the area to help for saving the city. So in 1986, I was a television reporter. And the news, many of you may remember, in 1986 was occupied a lot by the starving people in Ethiopia. And there was a group that got going in Wisconsin called Kids from Wisconsin for Kids from Ethiopia. Some of you may have been active in that. And they were sending relief supplies to Ethiopia. But of course, there were also the stories about, well, is it really getting to where it needs to be? You know, are there corrupt officials that are raking off this, that, or the other? And Western Wisconsin had a little different slot because we had a fellow who was from a small town in Western Wisconsin who was in northwest Somalia, right next door, and he was in charge of all the food distribution through the United Nations World Food Program in that region. And he was telling us what they really needed there. Now, why is the relationship there? Simple. Ethiopia was becoming a communist government at the time. They were kicking people off their farms and seizing the land to make them into collective farms. They were doing it at the point of a gun, and sometimes the gun went off. Didn't take much, but there was hundreds of thousands of people decamping and moving into next door, northwest Somalia, because it's a tribal area anyway, and many of them are nomadic. So there they were. And disease soon followed. And this fellow said, with the young people getting diarrhea, we need whole milk to help cure them. So the farmers in western Wisconsin came up with 4 or 5 semi-loads full of dry, bagged whole milk. And when they shipped them, before they shipped them, they drove some of the semis through area schools in the region and let some of the kids sign the bags. And a month later, I went over with a television crew, myself and a photographer, and some of you may remember Patty Nystuen, who used to be on Channel 27 here many years ago, along with me up at La Crosse. And we got there a month later, and we were told, well, you're not going to find any of that dry whole milk because it was so desperately needed. It was put to work right away in the feeding centers. And I was holding in my arms a nice, plump 2 or 3-year-old young boy. I saw his before picture, if you will, the picture of what he looked like when he came in, and it would have made you throw up. Scary bad. And yet here he was, healthy as anything. And I was telling an Indian doctor how this all came to be, and he said, really? He said, let's take a walk. We went a quarter mile down in between all the huts to a steel storage shed, and he opened it, and lo and behold, there were the last 3 or 4 bags of whole milk sitting there, and one of them was signed by a kid from Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. It was like striking the mother lode. We had proof. It really did make a difference, and we knew it made a difference. It was what a pleasure it was bringing back news, in that case, of a team effort in Wisconsin saving lives half a world away. The last story is in 1989, our Rotary Club, I was not yet a member, chartered a club in our sister city of Dubna, Russia. Talk about something I never thought I'd be a part of. And the reason I was because I was an early computer geek, and my friend who was in the club who was working on the project didn't have email, so I said, fine, I can send messages back and forth, and I helped. And a year later, the country of Russia was hit by a horrible harvest, followed rapidly by a very bad winter, and there was a movement that started in America that said, what if all the sister cities in the U.S. with sister cities in Russia got together, and we raised food, medical supplies, clothing, and sent it to our sister cities as a statement of international friendship. What a neat thing that might be, and maybe it would tip that country and the people of that country into going in the right direction, because their government was really chaotic at that point. So a meeting was held in Stevens Point. A couple of our volunteer Rotarians were there and came back. And the plan in Wisconsin was, if we all did this in the state, 7 cities, maybe we could fill a C-5. That's a pretty big airplane. 6 Greyhound buses fit in it side by side. 96 tons, I think, is the payload capacity. And so they formed a committee. Most Rotarians, I think I was the only non-Rotarian on that committee, and called it Hands Across the Heartlands. Great slogan. Said it all. And 39 days later, 39 days, we had 2,500 people that had come out of the woodwork, and La Crosse all by itself had 400,000 pounds worth of food, medicine, and clothing, and 60,000 in cash, shrink wrap, palletized, on the ready to go on an airplane. And I got lucky once again. And so I went with 16 other people on the C-5, which was the first of 3 shipments. We filled a C-5, we filled a 747 freighter, and we had to send 40 tons by sea. And when we landed in Moscow, I was shooting video out the window between the 2 pilots. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. But the image that sticks with me from that little adventure was of a 9-year-old autistic young man. I think he had Tourette syndrome. And he and his mother stood patiently in line for about a half an hour waiting to get some of the things that we had brought from La Crosse. And when his mother saw him get a brand new pair of winter boots, the look on her face was, for me, a real neat Rotary moment, even though I wasn't yet a Rotarian. Within months, I was. And all I can think of was, there have been very few of those kind of moments I've had in life. Another one of them I don't think I fully described, and I'm going to backtrack just a second because I want you to share it. When I was in Ethiopia, I watched a mother cook breakfast for her kids, and she was cooking pancakes. And you know what? A pancake looks like a pancake no matter where in the world you are. But she was cooking them on a rock, held up by a couple of other rocks with a fire underneath. That's caveman stuff. But she was grateful because we were, the people in Wisconsin had helped save lives of some of her kids. So those Rotary moments are few and far between. So when I was done with the Russia trip, all I could think of was, well, these Rotary people, they really get things done. And you know what? We still do. You still do. So my 2 fondest wishes for all of you. Number 1 is that if you haven't yet, that you have a true Rotary moment sometime in your Rotary life. And number 2, that you let your Rotary pride shine extra bright this year. And let's make it a great year. Thank you very much.
Questions?
President Jason says there's time for questions. Yeah. Oh.
Hi, Rotarianville. Welcome to our club, and thank you for coming today. I'm Karen Kendrick Hands. I might not be alone in the room of seeing the devastating rains and the flooding of the past week here and in your community and places in between as climate change is here. And I wanted to share with you that when Rotary International did their strategic plan, environmental activities in Rotary scored as high as polio with our generation and higher than polio eradication with the next generation of Rotarians, our future. I'm proud to be from a club that helped found the Environmental Sustainability Rotarian Action Group, and I know I got to get to the question. What is our district doing to help Rotary embrace that new direction? It's not an area of focus, so it's kind of an orphan, but it seems to have risen to the top.
Well, I could tell you first off that you have another champion who is, I believe, a member of your group from my club. Without going too deeply into her story, I want to tell you, these days Rotary is all about trying to lower the average age of Rotarians, which is a nice way of saying we'd like younger members. One of the best members our club's recruited in the last 5 years easily, and she's only been in the club for 2 years, is a 76-year-old retired fish and wildlife scientist who has recruited 9 new members for our club in the last 2 years and is all about environmental sustainability. And Roz is working in our area on projects that will do that, that will involve our club and perhaps our district at some level. So I know that it's certainly on my list on a regular basis. And remember that, many times the president gets a chance to influence, not the president, not the district governor, the president, the RI president, Barry Rassin. And Barry, if you don't know, is from the Bahamas. And as he told us in San Diego, they're fairly environmentally conscious in the Bahamas because 80% of their nation is less than 2 meters above sea level. And with the experts saying that climate change and global warming is going to raise the seas by at least that much, they're looking at 80% of their country disappearing. So the consciousness is going, and I guess I would draw the parallel that this is kind of like turning a battleship. You can't. You've started, and thank goodness that you did. And this club is to be proud that you have people who did start SRAG. Really, truly. And you just have to keep at it. I mean, my club has a project that has taken 20 years, and we're nowhere near what we ought to be in terms of its permeating all kinds of stuff, but we're keeping at it. And so that's all I can tell you. I don't know that we have a district-wide initiative, but events like the flooding of this week certainly can't help but make people think a little extra. And I could tell you, and I don't know what's going on in the Madison area because you all have gotten hit with floods. I just had an email today from a fellow who is instrumental in doing one of the things they do in La Crosse. Many of you have heard of Rotary Lights. That's a winter thing. In the summers, on different Rotary club than mine, one of the clubs cooperate, and they have a Moon Tunes, they call it, and it's at Riverside Park on the Mississippi River. They'll get 5,000 or 6,000 people there to listen to live music every Thursday night during the summer. And he just emailed me and said, could we do an encore presentation of one of their concerts in September to raise money for flood relief for Vernon County in our area. Got hit pretty hard. And my response to him was, when I get back, I have a lot of contacts in the emergency services area, and the first question is always, what do they need? And that's certainly something that Rotary's approach, which has also started to change in the last couple of years, takes into account. It's not a question anymore of let's do some good. It's a question of let's ask them what they need, first and foremost. And the second thing we ask is, and how can we make it sustainable? So it's a long answer, but thank you for your efforts. We good? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We are adjourned.